I was genuine as hell and you ain't won't believe me. I was genuine as hell and you ain't won't believe me. I was genuine as hell and you ain't won't believe me. I was genuine as hell and you ain't won't believe me. Sometimes I wish I wasn't famous. Praises go to my creator. Gangster don't do no complaining. Remember nights when I was hunger painting. Sometimes I fast just to let the maker know I'm thankful. In the hellfire, everything below the ankle. Blow a bed and let my grandmother know I made it. It's pain I feel, crying tears, it ain't no replacement. When your spirit comfort me and say you're so amazing. Stick your chest out, lift your chin up, forever I've been with you. Beautiful and you don't look like half of what you've been through. Pressure on my shoulders, still
is like scary bizarre. I don't know, man. The Simpsons have really predicted a lot of things that happen in the future. This is one of them. In 1998, the Simpsons actually come up with the correct equation 12 years before physicists and scientists and scholars come up with the correct equation for the Higgs boson, the God particle. I mean, come on, this is seriously unbelievable. They had physicists at Cern that were the biggest geniuses in the world trying to figure this thing out, and it took them decades to do it. And Bart threw this equation on a chalkboard in a show 12 years prior. Some people are actually convinced that the writers of The Simpsons are time travelers. I mean, they are coming up with mathematical equations that solve some of the mysteries of the universe on that show. Give me a follow.
Hi, and welcome to Cern, based here in Geneva, Switzerland. What is Cern? Well, Cern basically is the European Council for Nuclear Research, and it is the largest physics research facility in the world. But why does it exist? What is its origins? And why is Cern important in terms of our understanding of science? In this video, I'm going to discuss those things, and as well why Cern is important in terms of scientific research. So stay tuned. So what is Cern? Now, before I introduce Cern, I want to lay the groundwork. At the end of the 19th century saw an experiment that had a monumental impact on the way we view matter. With the discovery of the electron by J.J. Thomson in 1897, our understanding of the atom changed from this indivisible sphere to something that it was made of smaller components. And as a result, J.J. Thomson developed a model of the atom that was a bit like a cake with raisins embedded in it, or often referred to as the plum pudding model, with a positive dome with electrons embedded in it. So when Ernest Rutherford devised an experiment to test this model, he did two things that had its culmination in the beginning of Cern. He started the concept of determining properties of something by firing particles at it. In his case, he fired alpha particles at gold atoms, and he observed deflections coming off the gold atoms. Now, as a result, he determined that the majority of the atom's mass resided in the nucleus. And so he started the notion of using particle accelerators to examine the structure of the atom's nucleus. So over the next few decades, we saw the advent of particle physics, that is the study of the structure of the nucleus, but using particle accelerators to examine it. Now, the faster you can accelerate your particles, the more energy the particles have, and therefore the better they can probe the nucleus. And so in the 1930s saw the development of the cyclotron type accelerator, followed by the synchrotron type accelerator in 1945. Now, I intend to produce some videos on how they work for those who are interested in physics behind them, so yes, stay tuned. Now, this is where Cern comes in. After World War II, with much of Europe of course in ruins, there was an increasing concern for the lack of scientific research in Europe and the potential brain drain as many physicists left Europe and went to other countries. So it was Louis de Broglie who suggested an establishment of a European Centre for Nuclear Research. And in 1953, under the auspices of UNESCO, a meeting was held in Paris where 11 nations signed into existence the Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire, or Cern for short, and Cern was born. And what is its aim? Well, the humble question, what is the universe made up of? Its charter was to build state-of-the-art particle accelerators to better understand the nature of matter and the structure of the universe, to perform world-class research in particle physics, and to provide a place where scientists from all over Europe can collaborate. Critically, its charter also mandates that it remain unpolitical, that its work would be for peaceful purposes only, and that all its results would be made available to the public. That is, complete transparency. So Geneva was chosen because of its central location, and Geneva already had a very well-established reputation as an international city. So in 1954, in the fields around the village called Mérières, just outside the outskirts of Geneva, work was started. Now, over the decades, Cern has grown, building a succession of particle accelerators to probe the structure of the nucleus, each one being more energetic than the previous, and in the process provided an increasing understanding of the fundamental nature of matter. So first was the synchrocyclotron in 1957. And we are here at the first particle accelerator at CERN, the synchrocyclotron. Pretty exciting. Then came the protosynchrotron in 1959, the super proton synchrotron in 1976, and the electron-positron collider, and of course the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, which was instrumental in providing evidence for the Higgs boson and validated what we call the Standard Model, which explains the fundamental components of matter. Now, CERN encompasses a huge area, predominantly involving two main sites, the Mérières site and the Prévestin site, and of course the LHC and the four main detectors on that ring. And signifying its international focus, it straddles across the Swiss and French border. And on these sites, apart from the laboratories and offices, you'll find particle accelerators performing a whole range of experiments to look at different aspects of our understanding of matter. Now, CERN is much more than a European organisation these days. What started with 12 member states from Europe has grown to 23 member states, 7 associated member states, which includes India and Pakistan, with many more countries of observer status and cooperation agreements with CERN. There are over 600 institutes and universities that use CERN's facilities. One local example for me is, for example, the University of Sydney's Particle Physics Group, who works with CERN's Atlas detector analysing the data that's collected there. CERN is truly an international organisation. Of the over 17,000 people who call CERN their workplace, over 12,000 are not only physicists, but engineers, mathematicians, computer scientists, and many more. Plus, of course, the many support personnel that are there, representing over 110 nationalities. Although CERN's focus is gaining a better understanding of nature, out of CERN has come many applications that you and I have been impacted on. The World Wide Web was created there, and so was the capacitive touch of the electronic screens that your devices now utilise. So you can thank CERN for the fact that you're watching this on your device. PET scans and other medical technologies to diagnose and treat cancer is a direct application of the technology that comes from CERN. And because CERN has to build many new instruments from scratch, purpose-built for its work, the technologies that they produce end up being used in other diverse range of industries, such as aeronautics, manufacturing, computing, and medicine, just to name a few. So what started as a place to do cutting-edge research in Europe has become a global cooperation that not only has advanced our understanding of matter, but has directly and indirectly positively impacted every person on this planet in some way or another.
Collider and physics experiments at this level. The key word is energy. What they're trying to do there is mimic, approach the energies that happened at the beginning of the Big Bang. When all the energy that was released, some of it stayed energy, a lot of it turned into matter. And so if you want to understand the nature of that matter, you need to pull it apart and have a good look at it. And you do that by banging particles into each other that smash into their constituent particles, elements, even smaller and smaller and smaller subatomic elements. And you need huge energies to do that. You're accelerating protons, the building blocks of atoms, around this ring at near the speed of light and smashing them into each other, and they fly apart, revealing all the constituents and other elements and energies that make up matter in the universe.
And why is this research so important?
Well, if we want to understand our place in the universe, we need to get as deep down as we can get. And in order to do that, you need these energies. And that's what they're doing. They're upgrading the injectors that fire the particles. They're not upgrading the magnets so much as retraining the magnets that direct these particles so that you can get these higher and higher energies. And also they're getting higher collision rates, because when you're doing these experiments where maybe 1 in 1,000 times you get the result you want, you need to do them many, many, many times over and over again. And, you know, the answer to why are we doing it is, if we want to understand the universe, our place in the universe, we need to get as fundamental understanding of it as we can. It's called the Standard Model. And what these guys are trying to do is break the Standard Model to see if it holds up to everything they can find out. You know, everything we know about the universe is all lumped together in this idea of the Standard Model.
So what kind of timelines are we looking at here?
I won't see it. It's impossible to know, because each time they do something, they find out something else. You know, until 2012, the Higgs boson was something on an equation, and then the Large Hadron Collider proved it. The things that are going to be very interesting in the next part, in the next few years, I was talking to a physicist at Cern, not involved with the Large Hadron Collider, but with the antimatter factory, which we're going to visit on Razor in a couple of weeks, which I'm very excited about. He said the raison d'etre for the Large Hadron Collider now is to try and discover dark matter. Dark matter in that standard model that I was talking about, and dark energy, are the bits we know have to be there, but we have no idea what they are.
But the answers to the universe are years and years and years, decades away.
We may never get all the answers to it. You know, as J.B. Haldane said, the universe is not only very strange, it's far stranger than we can imagine.
This is the Large Hadron Collider. It's 27 kilometers in circumference. It's the biggest scientific experiment ever attempted. Over 10,000 physicists and engineers from 85 countries around the world have come together over several decades to build this machine. What we do is we accelerate protons, so hydrogen nuclei, around at 99.999999% the speed of light. Right, at that speed, they go around that 27 kilometers 11,000 times a second. And we collide them with another beam of protons going in the opposite direction. We collide them inside giant detectors. They're essentially digital cameras. And this is the one that I work on, Atlas. You get some sense of the size. You can just see these EU standard size people underneath. You get some sense of the size. 44 meters wide, 22 meters in diameter, 7,000 tons. And we recreate the conditions that were present less than a billionth of a second after the universe began, up to 600 million times a second inside that detector. You know, immense numbers. And if you see those metal bits there, those are huge magnets that bend electrically charged particles so we can measure how fast they're traveling. This is a picture about a year ago. Those magnets are in there, and again, an EU standard size real person, so you get some sense of the scale. And it's in there, those mini Big Bangs will be created sometime in the summer this year. And actually this morning I got an email saying that we've just finished today building the last piece of Atlas. So as of today, it's finished. I'd like to say that I planned that for TED, but I didn't. So it's been completed as of today. Yeah, it's a wonderful achievement. So you might be asking, why? Why create the conditions that were present less than a billionth of a second after the universe began? Well, particle physicists are nothing if not ambitious. And the aim of particle physics is to understand what everything's made of and how everything sticks together. And by everything, I mean, of course, me and you, the Earth, the Sun, the 100 billion suns in our galaxy, and the 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe. Absolutely everything. And you might say, well, okay, but why not just look at it? You know, if you want to know what I'm made of, let's look at me. Well, we found that as you look back in time, the universe gets hotter and hotter, denser and denser, and simpler and simpler. Now, there's no real reason that I'm aware of for that, but that seems to be the case. So way back in the early times of the universe, we believe it was very simple and understandable. All this complexity, all the way to these wonderful things, human brains, are a property of an old and cold and complicated universe. Back at the start, in the first billionth of a second, we believe, or we've observed, it was very simple. It's almost like imagine a snowflake in your hand, and you look at it, and it's an incredibly complicated, beautiful object. But as you heat it up, it'll melt into a pool of water, and you would be able to see that actually it was just made of H2O, water. It's in that same sense that we look back in time to understand what the universe is made of. And as of today, it's made of these things, just 12 particles of matter stuck together by 4 forces of nature. The quarks, these pink things, are the things that make up protons and neutrons, that make up the atomic nuclei in your body. The electron, the thing that goes around the atomic nucleus, held around in orbit, by the way, by the electromagnetic force that's carried by this thing, the photon. The quarks are stuck together by other things called gluons. And these guys here, the weak nuclear force, probably the least familiar, but without it, the sun wouldn't shine. And when the sun shines, you get copious quantities of these things called neutrinos pouring out. Actually, if you just look at your thumbnail, about a square centimetre, there are something like 60 billion neutrinos per second from the sun passing through every square centimetre of your body. But you don't feel them, because the weak force is correctly named. Very short range and very weak, so they just fly through you. And these particles have been discovered over the last century, pretty much. The first one, the electron, was discovered in 1897. And the last one, this thing called the tau neutrino, in the year 2000, actually, just, I was going to say just up the road in Chicago. I know it's a big country, America, isn't it? Just up the road. Relative to the universe, it's just up the road. So this thing was discovered in the year 2000, so it's a relatively recent picture. One of the wonderful things, actually, I find, is that we've discovered any of them when you realize how tiny they are. You know, there's a step in size from the entire observable universe, so 100 billion galaxies, 13.7 billion light years away. The step in size from that to Monterey, actually, is about the same as from Monterey to these things. Absolutely exquisitely minute, and yet we've discovered pretty much the full set. So, one of my most illustrious forebears at Manchester University, Ernest Rutherford, the discoverer of the atomic nucleus, once said, all science is either physics or stamp collecting. Now, I don't think he meant to insult the rest of science, although he was from New Zealand, so it's possible. But what he meant was that what we've done really is stamp collect there. Okay, we've discovered the particles, but unless you understand the underlying reason for that pattern, you know, why it's built the way it is, really you've done stamp collecting, you haven't done science. Fortunately, we have probably one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century that underpins that pattern. It's the Newton's laws, if you want, of particle physics. It's called the Standard Model. Beautifully simple mathematical equation. You can stick it on the front of a T-shirt, which is always the sign of elegance. This is it. I've been a little disingenuous because I've expanded it out in all its gory detail. This equation, though, allows you to calculate everything other than gravity that happens in the universe. So you want to know why the sky is blue, why atomic nuclei stick together. In principle, if you had a big enough computer, why DNA is the shape it is. In principle, you should be able to calculate it from that equation. But there's a problem. Can anyone see what it is? A bottle of champagne for anyone that tells me. I'll make it easier, actually, by blowing one of the lines up. Basically, each of these terms refer to some of the particles. So those W's there refer to the W's and how they stick together, these carriers of the weak force. The Z's, the same. But there's an extra symbol in this equation, H.
As we seem to be getting closer to understanding it does, what would that do? What would that mean?
It may mean we'd be able to unlock limitless energy. Let me just put it that way. It may be that we would understand the next secret of the universe, that we would know, we'd be another step closer to knowing where we came from. We'd be another step closer to understanding the universe itself, which is ultimately quite a mystery to us.
What is this Higgs boson God particle?
At the very, very beginning of the universe. See, people here, as a matter of fact, I'm in Los Angeles. People at Mount Wilson, not far from here, notably Edwin Hubble, noticed that all the stars, everything's moving apart. So he reasoned that everything was all together at one time, and this would be the Big Bang. Well, at that time, it is speculated by mathematical, elegant physical reasoning that everything was kind of one thing. But then after the Big Bang, things started to separate. things started to take on different properties. So that pure energy, like light, has no mass. The particles of light have no mass. The particles that make up you and me, like you've probably heard of protons and neutrons and electrons, they have mass. And do you know why?
No.
No one really is sure why. But it could very well be that there's an exchange of particles. Nowadays, we view these things as particles. We do experiments to detect particles, and you detect particles. Protons are made of quarks, which are held together with gluons. No kidding. And so it could be, it's very reasonable that these other particles all exist in this ether that would be called, named after Peter Higgs.
Right.
That is then infused with little particles that give them mass, that help them have mass. And this would be the Higgs boson.
Scientists have recently discovered proof of the once theorized God particle. Einstein himself claimed that this particle, if it exists, could change how we view the world. Well, a Swiss research team were able to prove its existence, publishing a paper in February. The God particle weighs half of normal particles, meaning it can transmit electricity faster and more efficiently. Could this be the future of electronics?
What is the God particle, and what about its discovery was so important? The God particle, more formally known as the Higgs boson, is the particle responsible for giving other particles their mass. But up until 2011, the Higgs boson was nothing more than a theory proposed by Peter Higgs, along with 5 other physicists in the pursuit of discovering why particles have mass. Now, thanks to the Large Hadron Collider at Cern, we've been able to observe it. So, other than the importance of just knowing that it's real, what was so important about this particle's discovery? The importance lies in how it behaves. This is because the Higgs boson is described differently in different theories, 2 of them notably being the Standard Model and string theory. In the end, it was discovered that it acted in the way described by the Standard Model. While this discovery was worth all the work that went into it, with how hard it was to find, it lived up to how Leon Letterman referred to it as the goddamn particle.
Geneva, Switzerland, here, buried over 300 feet beneath the Earth, and covering a remarkable 17-mile expanse, is the largest and most complex machine ever created, the Large Hadron Collider, or LHC, smashing tiny protons together at speeds of nearly 670 million miles per hour. The LHC creates such intense energy that some people are afraid it could actually create a black hole and swallow up the entire Earth.
The Large Hadron Collider is a real triumph of human civilization. It is easily the most complicated and powerful device that the human beings have ever built. You're actually firing 2 protons into each other and having them collide with an enormous release of energy, recreating conditions in a very small area similar to the Big Bang in its very earliest instant.
It is a bit like going back in time towards the Big Bang or the beginning of the universe, getting to points in the history of the universe where the energies were that high.
On July 4th, 2012, thousands crowded outside an auditorium at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, or CERN, to hear the announcement of the LHC's first major finding. Streaming the event live across the world, scientists prepared to reveal a discovery that could solve a decades-old mystery about the nature of our universe.
The atmosphere in the room was incredible. It was not like a normal physics symposium or seminar. It was truly something of completely different magnitude was going to be announced. That it is completely extraordinary, which it was.
What the scientists at CERN had discovered was a tiny bit of matter that some call the God particle.
Scientists around the world celebrated the discovery of the God particle as a milestone in human knowledge and thought that it's going to open up new layers of our understanding of reality.
But just what is the so-called God particle? And what is it telling us about the universe? Known in the scientific community as the Higgs boson. The particle was first theorized by physicist Peter Higgs in 1964. Its discovery confirms the existence of an invisible force throughout the universe, known as the Higgs field. Scientists believe when particles interact with this field, they acquire mass, which slows them down and allows them to form matter, such as planets and stars.
There's great excitement in the scientific community because the Higgs field permeates all of space-time. It's possible, theoretically, to effectively switch off the mass of particles and achieve near light speed very easily. This could open up not only the planets, but the stars to human exploration.
Whether it's in science, religion, philosophy, or the ancient astronaut theory, the fact is we are all seeking answers to the same questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? And ultimately, where are we going? And so we celebrate a discovery like the Higgs boson or God particle because it brings us that much closer to answering the questions that have fascinated humanity for thousands of years.
Large Hadron Collider is a particle accelerator that smashes subatomic particles at incredible speeds in an attempt to open a portal to another dimension, to smash our reality into other ones, our timeline shifting into other ones. Cern is located between Switzerland and France. We spoke about Atlas here in another video. So the LHC is 5.3 miles in diameter and 16.8 miles in circumference. I don't know if it uses any power from Lake Geneva like water power, but I find it interesting that it is located next to Lake Geneva. And as mentioned before, supposedly the World Wide Web was created at CERN using www to go to an address, and W in Old Hebrew is Vav and represents 6, and 3 of those W's is of course 666. And what a coincidence, so is the logo for CERN. And I believe it's worth noting that CERN has a statue of Kali out front of their facility, and it was gifted by India to celebrate them on their research. And Kali is the goddess of death, time, and change. And it's a popular belief in the truther community that CERN is connected to Mandela effects. And if they're going to have the most powerful launch ever since the Large Hadron Collider was built to take place of this year, July 5th, then we can expect more Mandela effects. I believe that's a safe assumption. I mean, CERN backed by D-Wave that can literally run the world on its own. Who knows what's going to happen with this launch? I don't think the simulation is going to crack in half, but you will notice some small changes, I believe. So not only is CERN connected to D-Wave, but it's also connected to other particle accelerators right here in the States at Fermi Labs. So Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory, located just outside Batavia, Illinois, near Chicago. It's like CERN's little sister because this particle accelerator facility is connected to CERN, and they can control CERN's control room from this facility in Chicago. These accelerators are constantly running and feeding information back to CERN. They run 24/7 to look for new particles. Wait, so let's connect something here before we go. So supposedly the World Wide Web was started at CERN. So I would assume that CERN has a log of everything that was ever said on the World Wide Web since the inception of it, and therefore connecting it to any systems that would also be connected to it, like 5G. And I told you that the 5G is connected to the nanobots that are being drenched on your body every single day when you leave your place. And then those nanobots send vital and DNA information in the form of an electromagnetic signal back to a satellite that is connected to the 5G system that is connected to D-Wave, which is connected to CERN. And these nanobots are attempted to build an artificial third strand to your DNA that would biologically hijack your body. And like I said, I believe the entire system is connected to D-Wave, which will also be used to control AI bots, like Skynet from Terminator. So Skynet is a fictional artificial neural network based conscious group mind, an artificial general superintelligence system that serves as the antagonistic force of the Terminator franchise. But how's it fictional if it's happening right now? Come on. So I want to point out, if you do have the jibber jabber, the nanobots are altering your DNA, allegedly. And nanobots are also being sprayed from chemtrails every single day. They send information back to the 5G network. And I don't know what system they could be using. And by saying this, I'm not saying anything negative about Elon, but they could be using Starlink. I believe a large part to this entire plan is just conquering the DNA. And Side note, it's weird that they always encourage melanated people to go first because they want to experiment more on our DNA. And the more melanated people that are jabbed, the more information they have to work with. But they're tracking everybody. So on a larger scale, all of the information that is being collected is actually being doubled in the sentient world simulation. And that sentient world simulation is, I believe, is directly connected to the quantum computers because they run real-time situations. So AI get to learn what would happen in a real-time situation by using a sentient world simulation because it has real-time information from people via nanobots. So essentially, AI would know what's going to happen. It has large probabilities, like different probabilities of what would happen before it happened because it's running several simulations every second based off the information that it's getting. Because this system is constantly getting information, not only from nanotechnology, but from the phone in your hand. If you want to go more in depth in learning and studying about artificial intelligence, I would suggest reading this book, Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom. It's a heavy read. I'm almost through it myself, but it's helped me to understand AI in a very, very deep way. But we're going to stop here for today and pick it up next time. Remember, don't be scared. Just be prepared. Take care of yourself, guys. I love you. Peace.
5D, a portal into another dimension. Make sure you watch until the end. So a few scientists in Tennessee are trying to figure out whether or not parallel universes exist. They revealed that they're trying to open a portal into another dimension by firing a beam of neurons through a 50-foot tunnel, as you can see here. They say this is just the beginning of a series of experiments that could prove that parallel universes exist right alongside our own. Let me know what y'all think.
There is something more supernatural on the drawing board at Cern than what is being admitted. Even Adam Barker of Tech Bubble wrote of Cern a while back that with the LHC, Cern are expecting to find other dimensions and open portals to these dimensions. If you have the image of Stargate in your head right now, you're spot on. That's what he said. Now, prophecy in numerous parts of the Bible refer to a coming day when portals will be opened and spiritual entities are going to pass through and come to the earth. This is Dr. Thomas Horn, and you are watching End Times Productions. Cerns Large Hadron Collider, the LHC, is the largest single machine in the world, located on the border of France and Switzerland. Its stated purpose is to accelerate subatomic particles by the speed of light and force them to travel in a loop where they then collide. The secular media, rife with non-believers, scientists, atheists, and skeptics of the supernatural, have also all been in a buzz over the global discussion around Cern's seemingly paranormal associations. Although Cern doesn't publicly profess to an agenda in relationship to God or Satan, evil versus good, the spiritual realm, as it would be described by Bible believers and so on, recall what some say was just a Cern ritual hoax, which involved video footage depicting what looks like an occult ritual with a group of people all dressed in black cloaks surrounding the statue of the Hindu deity Shiva at Cern, and, well, what appears to be stabbing a woman to death in a human sacrifice. The video ends with the videographer crying out and running away, and of course, when the film became public, experts at Cern said it was all just a joke. But all this does suggest there is something more supernatural on the drawing board at Cern than what is being admitted. Even Adam Barker of Tech Bubble wrote of Cern a while back that with the LHC, Cern are expecting to find other dimensions and open portals to these dimensions. If you have the image of Stargate in your head right now, you're spot on. That's what he said. And then he went on to draw parallels to the biblical story of Jacob's ladder. Perhaps you remember the dream that the patriarch Jacob had as he was fleeing his brother Esau. Jacob leaves Beersheba. He's on his way to Haran, and he comes to a certain place, and he stays there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he puts it under his head. He lays down in that place to go to sleep. And as he dreams, it says, behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Then Jacob wakes up from his sleep, and he says, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid. And he says, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven, Genesis 28. Now this ladder, described in the first book of the Bible, describes something like a portal from heaven to earth through which God's angels, interdimensional and spiritual beings from another reality, were traveling. When Jacob wakes up, he refers to the location as a gate, much like today's trendy terms gateway or stargate. One of Cern's goals is to recreate Jacob's ladder, according to Barker, and to reopen a portal that is said to have existed between Earth, Mars, Venus, and Saturn when the planets were in alignment many years ago. But whether Jacob's ladder really existed, he says, Cern are pretty sure that other dimensions do, and they're making it their goal to ensure that they open the portal for their use. Who knows? Now, Sergio Bertolucci, who is the official director for research and scientific computing at CERN, he was asked a while back about this extra-dimensional doorway by the Register, which is a London and New York operated science and technology journal. And he didn't hesitate with an enlightening response. He said, yes, out of this door might come something, or we might send something through it. And that sounds eerily similar to what Jesus said in John 1:51 when he said, truly, truly, I say unto you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Now, prophecy in numerous parts of the Bible refer to a coming day when portals will be opened and spiritual entities are going to pass through and come to the earth. Now, if that's true, and if those verses are accepted for their literal meaning and not written off as some kind of poetic allegory, as some scholars have claimed, then the idea of CERN playing with gateways is a major concern. And if, as CERN claims, they're only out to explore space-time matter, particles, and the origin of our known universe and planets from exclusively a scientific or Darwinian-related perspective, if their agenda is unrelated to Bible prophecy entirely, then what is it with all this mystical symbolism that they knowingly are associating themselves with? Wouldn't it be more appropriate for them just to proudly display a polished statue of a particle or some artist depiction of the Big Bang instead of the statue of Shiva? So, for those who have not yet heard about this controversial piece of art that CERN proudly exhibits between buildings 39 and 40 near the main building of their operation, it stands as really the most visible and celebrated imagery behind their work, Shiva. This is the Hindu god of destruction and a symbol of Shakti, or the life force. He is known very well as the destroyer. And in fact, in 2004, the government of India, which has had a long-standing friendship with leaders behind the CERN project even before the completion of the Large Hadron Collider, they gifted CERN with this bronze work of an art depicting Shiva as Nataraja, the lord or sometimes king of the dance. This dance that Shiva performs in the sculpture is the one that provides the source of the creation cycle in Hindu mythology, the preservation of all life in existence and the termination of all life in existence. The Rudra Tandava is a dance that especially displays Shiva's sadistic personality as he rains down the ultimate destruction upon a weary planet. Now, from the unveiling of this Nataraja on CERN grounds, controversy's been launched from all sides, including irreligious groups, with questions as to CERN's motive in its exhibition. So far, CERN's response has just most often pointed to the notion that the statue was simply a gift to an international and multicultural scientific institution, and they show it there on their property as an act of gratitude. But if pure appreciation were the only contributing factor, the implications behind the symbolism might continue to disturb some, but it's likely that the issue would at least be dropped by many irreligious groups that could find within themselves to accept the motive that's being put forward by CERN. The plaque at the side beside the statue, however, reads in part, "Hundreds of years ago, Indian artists created visual images of dancing Shivas in a beautiful series of bronzes. In our time, physicists have used the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of the cosmic dance. The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics." So right there out in the open for all to see is a direct correlation between the Hindu perception of Shiva hundreds of years ago, which is the concept of destroyer that I explained a moment ago, and our time, unifying, quote, ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. Additionally, and perhaps even more important, there's a significant section of CERN that is built upon the St. Genus Poëli, which is a commune in Ain, a department of France. In Roman times, the St. Genus Poëli was called Apaliacum. The name Poëli comes from the Latin Apaliacum with the Latin suffix lacum, which denoted possession. But the town and a temple were dedicated there in ancient times to Apollyon, the destroyer, the Shiva Horus, if you will. Apollyon is also the angel of the bottomless pit, referred to in Revelation 9:11. Of course, I can only speculate, but I note the connection between Nimrod, Apollo, and Abaddon, Apollyon at CERN, and the history of the region are all highly curious. Apollo was worshipped by the Romans of that area, as well as the Greeks and in central France. Apollo was equated with the Celtic god Atep Omerus. These two characters were combined to create Apollo Atep Omerus, which can be translated as great horseman or possessing a great horse. In the Celtic belief, horses were closely related to the sun. The interesting thing to note is the connection between this idea of Apollo being associated with horses in France, where part of the LHC and CERN resides, and what the book of Revelation states about Abaddon, where it says, "And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." End quote. I also note that Revelation chapter 9, after describing how these devil worshippers will be judged during the Great Tribulation period, it ends in verse 21 saying, "Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries," which is the Greek pharmakia, "nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts." Now, pharmakia is the word that describes the ancient occultic effort to use mind-expanding drugs during rituals in order to open a doorway for making contact with unseen supernatural entities. So, given these descriptions, is it possible that CERN will have something to do with the opening of the bottomless pit described in Revelation 9?
What does CERN and the Mayan doomsday calendar have in common? Besides the fact that they kind of look similar in shape. Do you guys remember that whole Mayan prophecy about the calendar ending on December 21st, 2012? And people were scared the world was going to end? The Mayans never said that the world was going to end, only that the world was going to become new again. Hence why the calendar ends and a new one starts, a new world starts. You know what else happened on December 21st, 2012? Cern was running its most powerful collider for the first time. Starting Monday, December 17, 2012, and going through Friday, December 21st, 2012, Cern will be launching and running a series of collisions which are predicted to break records in high voltage collisions already set by the LHC. I mean, even scientists like Stephen Hawking was concerned about Cern, saying that it has the potential to destroy the universe. This could also possibly explain the Mandela effect. I mean, the Mayans did say the world was going to become new again, and things were not going to be the same. Creepy stuff. What do you guys think?
Talk a little bit more about the Mandela effect. If you haven't seen part 1, go back and watch it. So back to this God particle. So this is Stephen Hawking right here, who I talked about in the first video. He said if we ever found a God particle, the world would end and we wouldn't even know it. A lot of people really do feel like the world ended in 2012. Let me tell you how. So according to Stephen Hawking, in finding a God particle, it creates a big black hole. We would get sucked in that black hole without even knowing anything was going on. We'll still carry on our day and literally be getting sucked in the black hole. He said the world will literally end in a day. Us being sucked in that black hole is what causes the Mandela effect and create the subtle differences that we talked about in the first video. But what I'm trying to figure out is we actually did find the God particle in 2012. So in finding that, we should have been sucked in the black hole. Somebody got some explaining to do. It will all come falling down.
How did we get here? Let's roll back a few days. This is Cern, the nuclear research laboratory on the border of France and Switzerland. It features the most powerful particle accelerator on Earth, the Large Hadron Collider, or LHC. What does it do? Well, it accelerates and collides particles at 99.99% the speed of light. And maybe it could produce the very first lab-grown black hole. How big would that black hole be? What precautions would you need to take not to get sucked in? And how long would it take to destroy the entire planet? This is What If, and here's what would happen if a black hole opened at Cern. Black holes. Gravitational matter devouring monsters traveling across the universe on their own terms. Some of them are so big they could gobble up the sun in a day. Could scientists create one of those at Cern? Theoretically, yes. But could a lab-made black hole be the end of Earth? Let's see. The LHC is a 27-kilometer ring of superconducting magnets. Inside, it accelerates particles to move at almost the speed of light. These particles are bound to collide, and when they do, they produce enough energy to create new particles. We're talking about very small amounts of energy here. The numbers are so tiny that scientists came up with a new unit of energy to measure particle energies at that scale. It's called the tera-electron volt. 14 tera-electron volts give you new particles. 1 followed by 19 zeros of tera-electron volts would give you a black hole. Already picturing doomsday scenarios? That's very much in the spirit of What If, but that's not how it would go down. If one of the experiments at the LHC ended with scientists creating a black hole, that black hole would be microscopic, as in quantum level small. It would have a mass about 40 million times smaller than the E. coli bacterium. It wouldn't get out of the accelerator and rampage across the planet, chewing up everything in its way. Well, it could get out, but because of its laughably small gravitational pull, it wouldn't attract a single piece of matter. The black hole would lose its energy through what's known as Hawking radiation long before it could gain any substantial mass, as if it never existed in the first place. Even when folks at Cern build a next-generation lab, the future circular collider that will outpower the Large Hadron Collider, will still be pretty safe. For a lab-produced black hole to potentially cause any damage, it would need to have a mass of at least 0.00002 grams. That's about 50 times smaller than the mass of an ant. It would take that black hole 9 octillion years to reach the size of 1 kilogram, and another decillion years to swallow up the Earth. The whole process would take longer than the age of the universe. I'd say no need to worry about it at all. The Earth doesn't get destroyed every time physicists do something cool, unfortunately. But if something does go wrong and you find yourself one-on-one with a black hole, don't panic. Tune in to our new show.
Cern, C-E-R-N, the European Organization for Nuclear Research in Geneva, started a project to accelerate charged particles. 10 days later, photographer Christophe Suarez posted a series of photographs of the skies above Cern. Those jaw-dropping photos showed the formation of strange clouds and were proof that the biggest experiment in the world is about to tear a portal into another universe open. Up until now, we've only seen such incidents in the movies. But now, after witnessing it in reality, people are not only concerned, but scared if the scientists have actually found a way to open a portal to another world. What's going to happen next? Are we going to be destroyed or meet ourselves in another dimension? But what really is of everyone's concern is the comeback of Cern. Nobody knows what secrets it holds, and today we're going to try to unravel the hidden truth about the gateway to the parallel universe. The European Organization for Nuclear Research, known by its French acronym CERN, is something that you'll hear about when there's some news about a newly discovered subatomic particle. It is the world's largest particle physics lab, and it has the biggest accelerator in the world, the LHC, or the Large Hadron Collider. The credit for being the biggest goes to its circular tunnel of nearly 17 miles, or 27 kilometers in circumference. The LHC, like all physics experiments, tries to test theoretical predictions and find whether they're flawed. It enables atoms to be smashed together with even greater power at nearly the speed of light, allowing it to recreate conditions comparable to those experienced during the universe's beginning. In 2012, a watershed moment for the LHC was the discovery of the Higgs boson, also known as the God particle. The physicists believe it's going to reveal the secrets of how the universe was created, as well as validate the Big Bang theory, which describes how an invisible, universe-wide field imparted mass to all things immediately after the bang. The discovery of the particle lends significant support to the standard model of particle physics, or the established rules of particle physics that scientists believe control the fundamental building blocks of matter. Now that they've identified the Higgs boson, scientists at the LHC have set their eyes on an even more elusive target. All around us is dark matter and dark energy. It's the invisible stuff that binds the galaxy together and makes up more than 95% of the universe. But no one has been able to directly detect it. Scientists only know it exists from the effects that it has. Astrophysicist Zhen Liu at the University of Minnesota told the Daily Galaxy in an email that the Higgs boson, a critical component of the standard model, could play the role of the portal between the luminous world and the dark world. Theorists believe that there is one type of dark particle that only interacts with the normal matter on rare occasions. Researchers believe that this particle can get caught up in the proton collisions that the LHC is continually making and monitoring. Liu is of the view that we might be able to directly detect the decay or the transitions between distinct states of particles that exists in the dark realm. Only if we use quantum mechanical coupling, though. Even better, we would be able to directly make dark world particles and identify them using our great control of Higgs boson production at the Large Hadron Collider or in future colliders as well. Recently, a group of scientists announced that they believe they can explain dark matter using a particle that, according to them, can travel to the fifth dimension. Scientists in a research published in the European physical journal C claim that the particle can shed light on dark matter. According to the latest research, 5D equations have been created that indicate the ramifications of an extra dimension in our universe and reality as we know it. The researchers looked at fermion masses, which they believe can be transferred into the fifth dimension via portals, resulting in dark matter relics and the fermionic dark matter in the fifth novel dimension. According to the researchers, if this heavy particle exists, it would necessarily connect the visible matter that we know and that we have studied in detail with the constituents of dark matter, assuming the dark matter is composed of fundamental fermions, which live in the extra dimension. Leo also exclaimed, "I cannot imagine how breathtaking the world would be when we master and control luminous matter and dark matter." But for the particle to be discovered, a lot more energy is required than the LHC that discovered the Higgs. To get to the mark, scientists have spent £21 billion. The LHC was shut down in December 2018 to allow for upgrade work to take place. The Large Hadron
Alright, so we rescued this.
Stopped for 2 years in order to make major improvements to the system. After the improvements, the Large Hadron Collider reopened in April this year, and it's ramping up for a third run to study new worlds of physics. This is going to be the most powerful version of it yet. A support manager of the project said, "Run 3 is exciting for me not only because it will give us more data at higher collision energies, which we always love, but also because the detector is the best it's ever been. Now, the trap is all set for the particle to be caught at any time." Lian-Tao Wang, a professor at the Enrico Fermi Institute and the Kavli Institute for Cosmological Physics at the University of Chicago, said, "If the particle is there, we just have to find a way to dig it out. Usually the key is finding the right question to ask." This was about the happy part, and now the conspiracies begin. As the LHC began to run again on April 22nd, wild rumors began to circulate that Cern was opening a portal to hell in quest of the God particle. This is not the first time scientists have come across such a thing. Remember the incident of 2016? Those photographs revealed an unusual cloud formation and electrical activity above the Cern facility. The strange clouds sparked a media frenzy regarding portals in the sky. Given that the LHC has found small black holes when smashing particles, which could suggest parallel universes and extra dimensions, what we previously saw could turn into a storm now that the Cern is even more powerful than before. Stephen Hawking, a renowned scientist, also warned us about the God particle. He even bet Gordon Kane $100 that physicists couldn't discover the Higgs boson, but when they did, Hawking issued a stern warning. In his famous book, Starmus, the scientist claimed that the particle could one day be responsible for the destruction of the known universe. He wrote, "The Higgs potential has the worrisome feature that it might become mega-stable at energies above 100 billion giga-electron volts." Here, the biggest concern about the destruction is the formation of small black holes that would expand and eventually decompose the world from within. Despite CERN scientists' assurances that these black holes would not destroy the universe, British astronomer Sir Martin Rees agrees with Hawking that they could open a Pandora's box, unleashing high-energy, strange matter that is extremely unstable and causing a catastrophic vacuum decay that would cause time and space itself to collapse. Hawking warned that this could happen at any time, and we wouldn't see it coming. Although such a catastrophe is unlikely in the near future, Hawking believes the risks of the Higgs becoming destabilized at high energy is too large to ignore. Scientists believe such particles could play a game-changing role in the cosmic history of the universe, producing gravitational waves of such amplitude that further gravitational wave detectors could hunt for them. For now, we don't know when the particle will be discovered, but everyone's in search of it. To get the answers, LHC will run for 2 years. When Run 3 comes to an end in 2024, CERN scientists will shut it down for another scheduled renovation, which will include more upgrades for the giant particle accelerator. When the renovations are finished, scientists will be able to rename the LHC the High Luminosity Large Hadron Collider when it reopens in 2028. The next generation of Higgs factories, for example, will be entirely focused on examining the fascinating possibilities centered around the Higgs Gateway. The International Linear Collider, the ILC, under consideration in Japan, and the Compact Linear Collider, the CLIC, at Cern, are two linear Higgs factories, whereas the Future Circular Collider, FCC, at Cern, and the Circular Electron Positron Collider, the CEPC, in China, are two circular Higgs factories. The particle smasher in China will be 5 times more powerful than the LH.
Conspiracy theory is guaranteed to make everything you've heard about CERN make a lot more sense. First off, they're trying to open a portal, and they've actually done it before. The last time was in 2016, where images like these showed the so-called portal and went viral. So why would they want to do that, you may ask? If you take a look at some predictive programming from the Avengers movie, it may be a similar function. And if you believe in the end times prophecy like Book of Revelation, that's exactly what it's for. Behold a red horse, it's happening. And since she sold her soul and works with a demon she calls Saucer Fierce, she's kind of like a messenger here. Check out the sun worship symbolism. How about Saturn's rings, or the little Saturns on her ears? Saint worship. The great sword from the second seal and the red horse is CERN's technology. It clearly states that it was man-made. They used it back in 2012, and that's what caused the Mandela effect. If you guys have been around for a while, you know all about that. They've also done human sacrifices to their mascot, the god of destruction. That's why everyone's freaking out. It's about to go down.
We're going from a third dimension to the fifth dimension, and December 21st, 2010, we will be fully into the fifth dimension, and this is when it's going to get a new beginning, because we'll be losing our arch enemy, in general, the Dracons, because as I say, there are some good ones, but most of them are not. And when we lose them, because the planet is putting them out, then we'll find out what we really worth, because we'll have the planet back again for ourselves. We've got 13 different kind of alien and extraterrestrial races intervening with us right now. Some of them are much different looking, so the government hides them in underground places and laboratories and islands and stuff like this. But these are times of choice. It's a time now where concentrated thought and spirituality must be used. It will be used either for you or against you. You can join the party and begin to also use it, or be subject to anybody that's using it upon you because you don't have enough energies or sense or awakened enough to begin to use it yourself. These are dangerous times. These are forbidding times. These are wonderful times. These are glorious times. It's glorious for those who now can awaken and see the power within and begin to lift that veil of Maya and understand what really religion is, what really race is, what really this planet is. And only when you awaken to a problem can you do anything to solve it. This is a time for solving it, not a time for fear. But if you don't do anything, I say be very fearful. Because if you go into some of these hospitals, take some of these drugs, go out and do the things they're telling you to, breathing the air that's bad and eating the food that's bad, yes, you're going to have problems because you're not going to be able to wake your immune system up, and you're going to be subject to whatever they want. And this is what they do. They put chips in you, make you a slave. We should be very concerned about it. Simply because we're under control on this planet. You know, there's a book out a long time ago, Everything is Under Control. And it is. Unfortunately, it's not good control. We've been dominated by a draconic type of a race of serpents and a race of dragons, if you want to call it, that walk upright. This is what all the holy books talk about. It's referenced in the Popova, it's referenced in the Bhagavad Gita, it's referenced in the Bible, it's referenced in so many things, and it's coming to the fore now. That's why you see all these movies that are telling you the truth. Heroes is showing you some of the new grade of crystals that are going to be coming in with the powers they can develop or can be augmented by machines to let them understand what's happening again. We are now under weather control. They now make weather, and if you doubt that, just look at the crazy things. You had tornadoes coming down in Missouri, you had tornadoes in Arkansas, you had tornadoes in Tennessee, you had tornadoes in Oklahoma, you got earthquakes that are happening in Italy, you got earthquakes everywhere, you got Vesuvius going off, you got the Kilauea in Hawaii going off, you have turbulences, you have seiches, you have drought. All these things are showing that there is an imbalance in our planet. But more than that, these various nations have perfected the science of weather modification. That's what they call it. I say weather control. They can make droughts, they can make storms, they can make hurricanes. We have pictures back in Isabel, which was almost 4 years ago, when Isabel was a category 5. It had like a 5-pointed star. When it was 4, it had a square. When it was 3, it had a triangle. I never got to 2 and the 1. It even had signatures. When you see a storm and you see lightning with no thunder, that's scalar technology, such as you have at Brookhaven, Pine Gap, Because if they start using over in Cern, when they started these particle accelerators, we are in a mess. And as you get in a mess, when you think you're better than the Creator, when you think you can dominate a planet that's been given the right to ascension, then you're going to see it's not even matter. It's like a tenant in a building won't pay the rent, messing up the electricity, the plumbing, cursing all the time, keeping everybody up. It's not a matter of if they're going to get evicted. It's a matter of when, and that when is pretty good. There are 7 dimensions just in this particular galaxy. I might even say this constellation, because in a galaxy you might have a lot of things. And the 7th dimension, we're on the 3rd. The 3rd dimension is just simply a physical reality. And like I say, those are conundrums, those are oxymorons. Physical is not reality. We're on a planet that you can have things that change into other things. It's called that morphing. You have a planet where you get seeds and things sprout from it, but in the seed itself is a pattern of what's going to be. It's like in the acorn is an oak. In our DNA is what we could be. But we have broken DNA, which lets us know that they had to break this DNA in order for us to stay on this planet. When we reunite that DNA and we start going up into the higher Sephora, the tree of life, now this planet could even begin to hold us. This is why we then could create the Merkaba, the Ka and the Ba of Allah, the vehicle of travel of light. We light in our mind. We're instantaneously wherever we think we are. That's what a God does. Now you're getting past 3rd dimension to 4th dimension. These devices that you see that we call UFOs, and some call it auroral fleets, and some have all kind of other names for it, are simply 4th dimensional devices using the basic magnetic field. We can actually use org energy, which is past any magnetism. We can begin to use ships of light and go and recreate anything we want. They can't do that. But when you have a soul, you can travel anywhere you want to. Now they realize that we're getting into the 4th dimension. That's what these new suns are bringing about. But once we get into 4th dimension, there's a dimension behind it. And I use the Matrix movie as a guide. The people were in what they call a 3rd dimension. They got into these chairs in this matrix, plugged in, and then they began to live in their dreams and thoughts. That was 4th dimension. At the end of the 4th dimension, when Neo became one, Neo left the 4th dimension and went on to the 5th dimension. Our planet itself has been granted the right to go from the 3rd dimension to the 5th dimension. That's unheard of. That's like going from pre-kindergarten to postgraduate school. All in the next 4 years. We're already on that journey. That's what the 2010 so-called Mayan calendar, and it's not a Mayan calendar, is supposed to be about. We're in the process of happening it already. That's why you have shows like this. This is why you have people searching, because that consciousness is coming back. The ability to think past the veil is coming back, and this is the time of enlightenment. The 2 suns will bring it to us. If we need 3, we'll get it, because we don't control this planet, the Creator does. The loss was only to recognize what we have so we can better appreciate it now that we get it again. Sometimes a child must wander away from home to find out how hard it was outside. Sometimes a good child gets outside and did better than they did inside. But until you ventured, until you fly out of the nest, you don't know what's out there and you don't know who you are. Once we do this, now we will better understand when we get on a higher vibrating planet, when we have the consciousness of soul, then we will understand and respect it better. Sometimes you have to lose what you had to know what you have and not lose it again. The gift is we are going to get it back. Number 2, the veil of Maya is being lifted. There's a race of people here that they're attributing a long count about what's going to be happening in 2012. Now, I simply say this. The Mayans, and I call them Mayans, but they have been saying Mayans. I always thought it was Mayans again, Maya and Mayan. But what is happening there is that they were taught by a people called the Olmecs, and nobody wants to deal with the Olmecs. And I'll make another statement if we're going to really get out the box. The Olmecs are really Washita Moors. And that's not even their real name. If you read back on Olmecs, that was a name that was classified because they grew near corn, and that corn growers or people near farming. They were anything but that, but they did understand hybriding. They did understand DNA, very much so in RNA. And if you look at all these basalt heads again in South America, Venezuela, Chichen Itza, you'll find them here in North America in the Grand Canyon. These big, huge, negroid-looking heads all over the place. You find them in Angkor and Thorvat. You find them in Japan. You find them in Cambodia and Laos. These were people all over this planet that looked extremely Africoid and Negroid. They were obviously respected because who in the heck carved all those millions almost of heads? I can't even say thousands. And what were they doing here? They're the ones that used a Venusian calendar. They used a Martian Sirius calendar. And they're the ones that talked about what was going to happen at this particular time, which has been adopted.
Everyone asking, the Large Hadron Collider at Cern is going to start back up on July 5th at 4 p.m. Switzerland time. That is still July 5th for the United States, but at 10 a.m. Eastern time. It will be streamed live on Cern social media channels and high-quality Eurovision satellite. They will have live commentary in 5 languages: English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. In this article, they say they have a special symposium planned on July 3rd and 4th. It says you are invited to watch their documentary Particle Fever, which follows particle physicists on their hunt for the Higgs boson, aka the God particle.
About the restart of the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, then put the 5th of July into your calendars, because this is the day when the Large Hadron Collider will start colliding particles at the highest energy we have ever done before.
I respect the terms, I keep my sticks on tight. Head on collision, hold the seatbelt right up. Might be locked up tomorrow, but we free tonight. Pray in the garden, get a leash on life. Leash on time, only right, we know. And please don't judge us for the past we chose. Looking up there, no one's sending me signs. Only this was a movie, I pressed the rewind.